Good evening and welcome to you all for another Lanu meetup where we're meeting in our Zoom room and we're taking our meetup online. And this way we get to share our information and our experience and wisdom with women all across the country. And tonight I have Dianne Elson from Rest Assured, Queensland. Welcome, Dianne, and welcome to all our people in the audience. How are you, Dianne?
Oh, I'm wonderful. Thanks, Taryn. I'm very, very excited to be here. And I'd like to say hello to all the ladies here tonight and just really hope that you get some really valuable information tonight that you can actually take home and implement in your homes straight after the call. And a lot of food for thought too, maybe. So I really hope that you enjoy my presentation tonight. And of course, thank you, Taryn.
It will be extremely valuable, and I know that you ladies will walk away with some strategies to immediately implement. Now, Dianne I have met Dianne a few years ago, and I have used her services from Rest Assured. And I'll give you a little bit of background history into some of the things that I have discovered with Dianne. You know, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer 3 years ago, it was a curious thing because I was lying in bed one night and it was actually formed in my left breast. And my husband walked into the room and I was sitting there with my mobile phone. I've got it here. I had it and I was sitting with it like this, scrolling on Facebook. So I'd have a shower, get into my pajamas, get into bed, and then scroll through Facebook. And he walked in one evening and he said, "I think we're ignoring the elephant in the room." And I looked at him and I was about to think that he was picking a fight with me, that perhaps I had put on a little bit of weight. And it was just that little bit of antagonism. And I was quick to sort of jump in and say, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "Well, have a look at what you are doing. You are doing this every night, lying in bed, scrolling on your phone. Is it no coincidence that your phone is so close to where your tumor has grown?" And it was really, really a wake-up call, a wake-up moment, because we really do understand that there are things such as, you know, frequencies in our homes and electromagnetic fields, but we don't truly appreciate the impact it's having on our body. And so, you know, I ended up having Dianne come over to my house, and Dianne arrives with her suitcase full of these amazing looking machines, and she's walked through my home and we've done some measurements. And the bizarre thing was, it's not just doing the measurements, you can actually audibly hear the change in the frequencies from the modem. So I'm sitting there and she measures the frequency from my modem to my side of the bed. And that was profound. And yet I was closer to the Wi-Fi, and my husband beside me is further away. There was no frequency on his side of the bed. I was sitting there right in the danger zone. So this is really an area of passion of mine to tell people about it, because not only do I speak about the effects of breast cancer, but I certainly, with the statistics of 1 in 7 women being diagnosed with breast cancer prior to the age of 85 in Australia, I do feel that there's a lot of proactive things we can be doing. So I'm incredibly excited to be able to bring Dianne to all of you in your home tonight. And now I will pass it over to Dianne and ask Dianne a little bit about her history and how you got into being Dianne Elson from Rest Assured, Queensland.
Okay, thank you, Taryn. And it's something that I do love to share because it completely changed the direction of my life. So it was around about 2014, 2015, I started to experience some really crazy health issues. For instance, insomnia, I couldn't sleep. I also had extreme fatigue and memory fog. So the extreme fatigue was that bad that a slight rise up to my unit that I used to be able to bound up, no problem at all, left me struggling to make it up there and feeling extremely fatigued once I got there. And the insomnia, I don't know if any of you ladies have had insomnia, but it's something that I didn't think that was really a thing, because I used to think, well, if you had insomnia, how the heck did you cope through the day? Well, trust me, you do. And now the memory loss and the brain fog. My brain was a little bit like, it had these little neurons or things that wanted to connect, but they weren't quite connecting. So it was a very lot going on in my head. And so when I was talking in a conversation with people, and this would happen in groups of people, halfway through my conversation, I would forget what I was saying. Or I'd have these words that I'd want to say, and I could see them clearly, but I couldn't get them from my brain out into my mouth, out of my mouth. So it really, these symptoms that I was experiencing really impacted my life and my lifestyle, and what I, there were certain things I couldn't do anymore that I really enjoyed doing. So naturally I do what we do. I went to the doctor and I went to some naturopaths. One naturopath picked up that I was electrically sensitive. Oh, okay, that's interesting. I do get a zap when I touch the car door. I understand that. That's all I could make of being electrically sensitive. And then went to doctors and I had some tests done and went back to get the results. And I was really concerned about what my doctor was going to tell me. So when I walked in there and sat down, I was quite surprised when my doctor told me that there was nothing wrong with me. I was really quite fit and quite healthy. So then I went into a big spin of, what the heck is my doctor not picking up? And I walked out into the car park and I just saw a future for me of doctors and medications and tests and all sorts of things. But it just so happened that that weekend I was flying down to Melbourne to do my first course on geobiology, radiation assessment and shielding. Now, I wasn't really that keen on the radiation assessment and shielding, or EMF. I had heard about it, but wasn't really that keen on that. It was the geobiology that I was really going down there for. I was down in Melbourne for 5 days, 6 days, and I came back to my environment. And at the time I was also studying. So I wasn't studying at my home because I didn't have internet. I didn't get good internet there. So I was actually going to another building and studying there. And when I went back and started studying again, I realised that while I was in Melbourne, my symptoms had abated. I still had a bit of memory problem down there, but my energy had picked up and I was sleeping really well. And it was when I came back and I went back into that environment that I realised that, wow, this is when my symptoms first started, and holy guacamole, this is just what I learned about in Melbourne. I learned about these symptoms and the penny didn't drop for me down there, but it sure did when the symptoms come back. So that got me on a mission. I had to find out whatever I could so that I could help other people, because I knew for a fact that there were other people walking around that were going through things like I was going through, and they weren't getting the answers that what they were looking for. And my biggest thing was for children and kids, because they can't, they're much more vulnerable to this than what we are, and they can't really express what's going on for them as well. So that led me to studying electrobiology and getting certified, a certification so that I can go into homes and assess and manage electromagnetic fields in people's homes and workplaces. So that's in a nutshell, pretty long nutshell, about how I got to be doing what I'm doing today, Taryn.
And I guess you got to know the immediate effects within your body. You got to feel it, so you really get to understand it, and therefore are so passionate because you no longer feel like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I just had some of the symptoms too, and there are quite a lot of symptoms, and we'll go through those down the track a bit as well. But yeah. So I often get people calling me and saying, I think my technology is affecting me, and they tell me their symptoms, and I'm like, yeah, well, I think it might be too. So it's quite interesting, some of the calls I get, and the people that just say, oh my gosh, it's so good to talk to someone that understands and doesn't think I'm crazy. Yeah.
So Dianne, I'll just double check. I'll just realise we'll just stick a mute. So Dianne, EMF, it's short for electromagnetic frequency, but what does that actually mean, and what is it?
Yes, okay, so it's electromagnetic fields, electromagnetic energy, it's also electromagnetic radiation, so it's a lot of things. And electromagnetic fields or energy or waves, they've actually been around us since the day dot. And in their natural form, they're absolutely harmless, and they travel in one direction in a wave form. Now this wave, it can't go through buildings or structures or anything like that. It just goes the one way and cannot penetrate buildings. And if we have a look at man-made electromagnetic fields, or sometimes you may see it as NNEMF, which is non-native electromagnetic fields. These are man-made ones. These are where, you know, the man has put information onto these waves, so it's actually altered how the wave works. So I think the best way for me to explain that is if we look at magnetic fields. So magnetic fields come from like the power poles out the front of our home, basically electrical wiring and appliances and things like that. And they work with an alternating current, so it's from our electricity. So the wave's not actually kind of going like it should be. It's kind of going forward and back, forward and back, forward and back. Now this, and this creates a magnetic field. And this magnetic field, it can go through buildings, it can go through walls, it can go through basically anything, and it's extremely hard to shield yourself from. So basically the only way you can get away from a magnetic field is to create a distance between yourself and that field, because you have to know where it is to be able to do that. And then we have the radio frequency radiation that's used in the telecommunications industry. So here we're looking at things like mobile phone towers in the area, digital TV transmission towers, those sort of things, your smart meters, your wireless routers, baby monitors, you know, anything that communicates wirelessly emits a radio frequency radiation, which is another form of an electromagnetic field. And what they've done is how they've put the information on this field is it uses a pulse frequency. So rather than going like this, it goes up and down like that. So we've got this, our body that is electrical and that's used of the background natural electromagnetic fields is now being impacted by the magnetic fields from the wiring in our walls and the radio frequency radiation from the telecommunications industry, which go forwards and back and up and down like this. And so it's that man-made EMF that's detrimental and impacts the health of the humans and insects and animals as well.
I've been, you know, listening to things about water being affected by frequency, and you know, it comes to full moon, our bodies are something like 80 to 90, you know, 80% water, and it's really interesting watching water being affected by frequencies. So, you know, when you came over to my place, you used your machine and you could actually hear the sound the frequency was making that we don't actually necessarily hear with our ears, but it's being felt by the cells within our body. And that was really quite profound. I know that you went into my son's room and we did a reading. We turned the Wi-Fi off and then we turned the Wi-Fi on, and we filmed you while we did that, just to hear what it sounded like. And it was startling. It really was. It was one of those moments where you couldn't possibly deny the fact that if you actually had to listen to that sound all day, you would be totally and utterly exhausted. And this is what our cells are being bombarded with all day. It's inaudible to us.
That's exactly right. Excuse me.
So when you're using those machines, you know, can you run people through about those machines and how it works? Because you had about 3 different fancy little gadgets.
Yes, well, when I do an in-home inspection or assessment here in Townsville, I take my meters with me. And so when I do an in-home assessment, we really want to look at, I focus on the bedrooms, because of course the bedroom is where we spend time. It's where our body rests and rejuvenates and gets over the day's, what we've gone through in the day. So we don't want that room to be impacted by electromagnetic fields. So I focus on the bedrooms, and I do other rooms, but I do take, when I come into a home, the first thing I do is I've got these meters here, these snazzy little meters here. So these meters are what I call, well, they're omnidirectional meters. So when I go into a room, I use these meters, and these meters tell me what's coming in from all directions that is impacting the room. So I go around the room, and I just stand there and I go like this with the meters, because I want to catch the waves and I want to catch what the highest readings are. And then when I ascertain what the readings are, I think, okay, well, we have a problem here. What I do then is I use my other meters, and so this one, I also, I take this attachment off and I put this one on like that, and I have this meter as well. Now these meters, this is where I then go around the room and I get readings from every direction, and that tells me what direction the highest readings are coming from. So then I can ascertain, I can follow the meter, I can work out whether it's an inside source or an external source. So it's excellent for locating where the exact source is coming from, or sources, not just the one source. And this is the machine that Taryn was talking about. Yeah, it actually makes a noise, and you can tell, because if I come closer to the whatever it is, the noise gets louder and louder and louder. So I know, oh yeah, I'm on the right track here. So that's those 2 meters. And why I have 2 different meters is that they both measure different ranges. So I can actually get from a 50 megahertz up to a 10 gigahertz range using both of those meters. So I can actually capture a lot of stuff of what's going on. So when I've done the readings, if there's any Wi-Fi in the home, I then get the Wi-Fi turned off. I do exactly the same again, and get the readings of the measurements with the wireless or the Wi-Fi, any Wi-Fi turned off. And then I do the magnetic fields. So the magnetic fields, I just use this plain little meter here. It's so simple and easy to use and read. So the magnetic fields, with this meter, so the magnetic fields are coming from things like the wiring in the wall, maybe the solar inverter or the solar panels or the power poles out the front, or the fish tank motor, simple things like that, or any appliance that's on. So when I do the measurements, I measure where, if it's the bed, I measure the head, the trunk and the foot of the bed, and I get my readings, and I think, okay, everything's either fine, or okay, there's a problem here. We're going to have to turn off the power. So then I turn off the power and I take the readings again, and that will tell me if it's still if it's an external source, because quite often the power poles out the front of the home can impact the home, especially the front rooms. And that's also the same for the underground wiring that we have now as well. So then I get the readings with the power turned off if there's a problem there. And quite often on the spot, I can quite often give simple things to do. Like I've been into homes where I've measured where someone sleeps and they have their bedside lamp on next to them, and they might read for an hour or 2 at night. Now, bedside lamps can put out quite a high magnetic field, and it's just been a matter of me moving a bed head maybe that far, and they're actually out of the higher reading area. So with the magnetic fields, it doesn't take, but you don't have to move that far sometimes to be out of them, but you've just got to know where they are. So the magnetic fields I've measured coming in on the water pipes. So they're traveling around the house on the water pipes. I don't know how that affects the water, but of course it does corrode the water pipes. But that's only if they're copper or metal water pipes. If you've got the polypiping, it can't, the magnetic field and the current can't catch a ride so to speak, on those. And there are ways to mitigate that if that is what is happening as well. So basically, then I go and I go through all my readings, and I do a report up with all the solutions that we put in place to reduce the exposure that the family may be exposed to with the electromagnetic fields.
And some of those solutions are really simple. And, you know, people sort of sometimes think that, oh, you know, I don't want to really investigate this because it's going to be too hard or too overwhelming. But for instance, in my home, you measured, and my daughter was actually sleeping the opposite side, you know, the other side of the wall to our electrical box. And it was fascinating because when you got to see that reading, there her body is trying to repair and recover and rejuvenate itself during sleep at night. And yet she was being pounded with unseen things. So, yeah, so it was really interesting. So it was so simple, just really moving where her bed was in the room. So it's not really hard things to do that you offer. So, you know, it's really adaptable. The other thing that, you know, I didn't realize when you came into my home was, you know, it was the overhead power lines beside my son's room, you know, and it was the direction he was sleeping in his bed. And we only had to move it really, you know, a small distance.
That's right. And it can make a lot of difference. Like, for instance, where I am at the moment, the power pole's out the front of my home. I can't sit here in summer because everyone's got their air conditioners on. So the current going through the wires is just really high, and it's producing a really big magnetic field. So I have to actually shift my office and sit at the kitchen table. It's not ideal, but, you know, it's better than actually sitting in that high magnetic field. And so, you know, it is great that I am aware of that and that I can do that. And it's, you know, I can't shield against that. I actually have to move away from it. So, yeah.
Now, you have a couple of really easy to do, simple tips that some of the ladies can immediately start implementing at home. Do you want to share some of that with us?
Yes. Well, what I did, I just thought about some things that I'd like to share with you that might get you thinking a little bit, because they're pretty random, you know, quite different things. So the first one is the microwave. Now, if you have a microwave, I've measured, been in people's homes, turned the microwave on, and I've measured the radiation coming from the microwave, because the microwave uses microwaves to cook the food. And that's exactly what our mobile phones and everything communicate with the local mobile phone tower, which is all on microwaves. And I've measured the microwaves from the microwave way back, a couple of bedrooms back. So what I wanted to share here was, I was one of those mums that when I put my kids on a bottle, I heated it in the microwave, and I would stand in front of the microwave with my baby on my hip, and we'd watch the bottle go around, and it'll be ready, and we'd be clapping our hands, you know. So I just want to say, if there are any mums here, or anyone that knows of any mums, to not stand in front of the microwave with their babies on their hips, and definitely to not stand in front of the microwave. So my suggestion is just move away from the microwave, move out of the room if you can when that's on. Even though you're not spending a great deal of time in there, we really want to reduce our exposure to EMF as much as possible, because there is so much of it around us, not just maybe inside our home, but outside it as well. So that's just one simple, small thing I wanted to share with you. The other one was wireless printers. If you have a wireless printer emits an extreme amount of radio frequency radiation. So my suggestion there, even when it's not printing, so if you're sitting, like if I'm here, I've got my printer here, but mine's not a wireless one. It's hooked up to my computer. And so mine's, you know, so if you're near your wireless printer, my suggestion to you is to turn it off when you're not using it and actually unplug it. Another thing I want you to think about with these things that I'm suggesting is I want you to think about what's on the other side of the wall of where that printer is. Is there someone's bed head there? Is there a favourite chair where someone sits and watches telly for a couple of hours or reads or something? So always think about what's on the other side of the wall, because that will be impacting the person on the other side of the wall as well. And the other thing, another thing is the wireless router. Now, the wireless router, I truly recommend that no one spends any time near the router. The router needs to be as far away from anybody as possible. So have a think about, if you have a wireless router, where is it? And again, what's next to it? Do you have any pets sleeping near it, for instance? Is it on the other side of a wall where a child sleeps? Maybe you sleep there. So with the wireless router, we really want to keep our distance from that. And if you do not need your Wi-Fi at night, I suggest turning the wireless router off and then unplugging it again. And that way, that will do amazing. That will just absolutely reduce the amount of radio frequency radiation in the home while the family's sleeping. And again, if you do have the router in the home, you don't need to use the wireless at all. No one's using it. Just turn it off.
Dianne, you've mentioned twice now with the computer and the printer and the router, not just turning it off and pulling the plug out. Why is it not good enough just to turn it off?
Well, yeah. Well, funnily enough, I've measured in homes where we've actually turned it off and we haven't unplugged it, and it's still sending out a signal. The thing is, with these devices, if they are cut off from their signal, they just work so much harder and stronger looking for that signal. There's just a connection that they have to have with each other. And so when one's cut off, the other one's really pumping out the power to find where it is. It's still working when it's plugged in, a lot of them, and a lot of the wireless routers do too. So that's why I recommend to unplug it. And that way you know you're safe. Or get a timer or something. I do know a lot of people that they have a timer and they just plug the cord of the router into that, and it switches off maybe at 9 or 10 at night, and it comes back on at a certain time in the morning. And that timer does actually cut the power. Yeah.
That's interesting. So the other thing that you mentioned with my home was, instead of using the Wi-Fi wirelessly, was actually getting a cord and plugging it into the computer.
Absolutely. And that there's things you've got to be aware of when you do that as well. So let's say, for instance, you have the Wi-Fi and it's right next to where you're working. No one else needs the Wi-Fi. If you have a lot of them, I should have brought my cord. A lot of them have a port where you can actually put the old Ethernet cable in, like we used to have, and you can put that in one end of in the router, and then you can take the other end of the Ethernet and plug it into your laptop or your computer. Now, there's a couple of things that we must remember with that. That is, one, when you do that, turn off the wireless. You don't need the wireless then. But also on your computer, it's really important that you disable the wireless. So basically what you want to do is to put on flight mode and make sure that it stays on flight mode. Make sure the wireless doesn't pop back on, up and pop back on, because it's not enough just to have the cords there and leave the Wi-Fi on and flight mode on, because if you don't put flight mode on, it's the same as the printer. Your computer is going to be looking for that signal, and it's going to be pushing out so much more energy. And it's, you know, I have measured that with my meter, and my meter just maxes out, and my meter goes extremely high. So that's why I tend to not like to share that information unless I can explicitly make people aware that they must put flight mode on their computer when they do that. It's really important.
The other thing that was pointed out to me was we have a smart TV, so it is sending a signal to the router, and we identified the pathway and you told me where not to sit so that I wasn't in the middle of the signal that was being sent.
Smart TVs, they do put out a lot of power, and I've measured them, what they put out, like, you know, with your place, Taryn, and even further back when people are sitting right back on the couches watching it. There's still a lot coming, you know, being emitted from the smart TV. So you really need to have that distance. And if you can, my suggestion is just cable everything that you possibly can. And that again will reduce your exposure as well.
It was a really fascinating exercise. So what about with computers? You know, is the radiation, like I'm sitting here in front of my computer, the radiation, is it coming towards me? Or if someone were to sit on the other side of the computer, you know, like say you're going to a doctor and he's got his computer in front of you and you're sitting on the other side of the desk, where is it emitting its greatest amount of radiation?
It will be where the antenna is, basically where it's picking up, but you've still, you know, it's still going to be emitting the, like it just emits out. It just doesn't go from there to there or from there to the right router. It just emits out in that big circle. So anyone in that vicinity is, you know, the close vicinity of it is going to be impacted by it.
Okay. Something to think about, because I often sit there in a room opposite a desk and sort of think, you know, the back of the computer is facing me, and I'm always like, can you turn your computer? I don't want to have it, you know, directed at, you know, the back of the computer directed at me. But so it really is in a circumference around it, no matter what.
Absolutely. It's like the router, you know, the router, like a cordless phone, for instance. Now, cordless phones are a definite issue. So it's like the cordless phone. So if you've got your cordless phone, you can go all the way down to the backyard and still talk on your phone or whatever. The I'm going to use energy. Shall I use energy? Radiation sounds a bit. So the energy that's actually coming from that is not just going to the phone, it's going all the way around. So it's impacting everybody in the home. And of course, it's probably impacting your neighbor if it goes out that far. So so if you don't need to have a cordless phone, I would look at not having a cordless phone at all.
What about when you're driving in the car with your mobile phone?
Okay, so we're looking at a perfect, like a Faraday cage there, because when you've got the signal, if you have your antenna on top of the roof, that's much better, because the signal's not actually coming in, it's the signal's hitting the antenna and coming in, so it's not as impactful as if you are on your mobile phone with no antenna. So if you happen to have your mobile phone, you're sitting there and you're on a phone call, it's really high in the car because it bounces, the frequencies bounce around all through off the metal, and it's quite high, and I've actually measured it too, and it's very high. So you're better off not using your phone at all in the car. Even having it in, I could talk like for about 3 hours on mobile phones. Even having your mobile phone in the car, it's looking for the mobile phone tower every second, how many seconds or whatever that you're driving. So it's continually searching for it, and the mobile phone in your car is going to be putting out more energy. So it's really great to not have it near you. And I know it's very difficult, but even having it on flight mode if you can. But try not to use your mobile phone if you can in the car.
It's interesting because it's always kind of like calling back to its mum.
It is the connection. It's this strong addiction. It's just amazing. Some of the things I've measured, you know, and you're like, you know, I'll just share something else too, like, you know, a wireless mouse. You know, have a corded mouse. I've got a corded mouse. You know, a wireless mouse is the same. Like my meter has maxed out when everything else is off, and the wireless mouse is looking for its connection. So, and people complain about tingling in their fingers and things, things pain going up their arm and everything, and they're wondering what it's from. And an ex-physiotherapist just thought it was from the way her hand was on the mouse. She didn't for 1 minute. And why would you ever think that it would be the actual energy coming off of that mouse that would be impacting you? I mean, why would you think that if you don't know about it? So it's anything that is wireless, basically. So if you have a wireless mouse, I suggest you just get a wide one. Yes, okay, you have a wire hanging around, it doesn't look as neat, but it's so much safer, so much safer.
You know, some of this stuff that you're telling us is really just about going back to basics. And, you know, we get a bit carried away with technology and we're trying to make life easier. But what we're actually doing is, in the process, we're actually harming ourselves.
We are. We certainly are. And we're disconnecting as well from family. And, there's so much with these devices. But I just want to touch on the kids here a little bit too. So kids, when I talk about this, I'm talking about tablets and iPads as well. So quite a few years ago, before I went through all my symptoms, if I used my tablet up on my chest, my heart would palpitate. So it has that effect. So, you just think about children, they might think, oh, Mummy, my heart feels really funny. And Mum, or my chest feels really funny, or there's a funny fluttering feeling in my chest, and it can be just the tablet or the iPad. So for kids, if you can download whatever they're watching and put the iPad or the tablet on flight mode, that's great, because they're not then going to be impacted by the energies of the radio frequencies coming off of that. And by, we don't want children or ourselves even really holding these devices. We're not even meant to hold them in our hand. And it says that in the manuals. Any manual for your phone, for your iPad, tablet, anything like that says, do not carry these things. So you're not even meant to touch your mobile phone. So I always recommend that you put your phone down and speak from that. But I'll just go back to the iPad. Sorry, I got diverted there. With the kids too, what you can do is you can get a setup where you can get a jack that plugs into the tablet, and then you can have the cable connection going to the wireless router that you've actually turned the wireless off. And then there's no radiation coming. Or you can even do that even if you have the wireless still running, your router still running, you can have that cabled connection, and you can buy those cabled connections from JCar. You can get them cut to any size you like. Mine's that long that I can take it down my back stairs and work out on my back patio. So you can get it and you can have it plugged into the wireless router with the wireless still on if you want to, if you have to with that. But the kids can be well away from it with the wireless disabled on their iPad or their tablet or whatever they're using, because they do put out a lot of EMF. So that's worth investigating as well if you are concerned about your children and their use of devices.
Dianne, if you're using a mobile device like a tablet, and it's not supposed to be touching your body, and most people are holding it and it's resting on your lap, what are the effects of that if it's resting on your lap?
Well, you've got to think about what organs and what is being exposed. So you've got all the organs around your abdomen, your legs. Now, there was a TED talk about this lady. She was an athlete, and she developed a massive tumor on her leg, and she had no idea why she would have got this tumor. So it clicked one day. She was sitting down and she had her laptop on her leg, and she always crossed her right leg over her left, and she placed her laptop on her right thigh, and she worked on it for hours sitting like that. So she looked into that, and then and she discovered that in her manual it said that or wherever she dug deep, because you've got to dig deep to find this stuff, that she was supposed to be, where are we, 20 centimetres away, that far away. Can you see that, ladies? 20 centimetres away from her body when she was using it. Now, I know for a fact that that is nowhere near enough distance, but it's better than nothing. So then she, because I couldn't explain why the heck she would have this big tumour there. So then, of course, that got her on her little high horse, and she went off and she's, you know, done heaps of research on all this stuff as well.
So what about, like, I've bought like a special little tray that's supposed to protect, you know, between and stop. Do those things work?
Well, this is my thought on that. If there is something that blocks the radio frequency from going down onto your legs, well, where is it going? So it has to be bouncing back up. So yes, it's protecting your legs and all that, or wherever you're holding it, but the radio frequency just doesn't absorb and disappear because there's something blocking it. It has to go somewhere. So in my opinion, or the way I see it, is it just bounces back up. So I don't know if that's a really good idea or not, Taryn. Yeah, so thanks for bringing that up. But that's not, yeah, I just, you know, that's just my take on it. I've measured those little things, stickers and things you put on phones and things like that. You know, always ask the question, if this is meant to be protecting me, how come I'm getting a signal? How can I still make a phone call? If you buy those things that you plug into the wall, and you can still get your wireless, you can still make phone calls, everything like that, you got to ask the question, how is that protecting me? Jan was at a workshop I did once, and we measured one of the ladies that was there. We measured her. She had a mobile phone protector that was supposed to protect the mobile phone, and when we measured it, there was no protection at all that we could visit, that I could really pick up. Now these things may offer a little bit of protection, and that's great. Any bit of protection is great, but I always say you still got to use these devices safely because they don't protect you enough. It's not enough. You know, it might be a drop in the ocean that they're protecting you. So you've got to be very mindful of any products that you buy to protect yourself from electromagnetic fields.
Mm. Di, I'm backtracking a little bit. I guess, you know, I'm still mulling over something that you said earlier about the way electricity pulses and the way it goes. Is that what they're talking about when they talk about dirty electricity?
No.
No, okay.
Dirty electricity is another thing altogether. And that's not as widely known as what the, and not as much, you know, there is a lot of research about it, but not as much as what the magnetic fields and the radio frequency radiation is known. But dirty electricity is definitely a thing, and it's caused by, well, solar panels, basically a one thing, an inverter. So the inverter, when it changes from AC to DC, it does something to the electrical wiring. I can't quite remember what it was, but it produces this dirty electricity, and dirty electricity comes with all its own health issues as well. So that's not something that is my field, but I am aware of it. Yeah.
Well, I think that your machine, does it measure things coming out of inverters for solar panels?
Yeah, it does.
Because I know that a friend of mine tells me the story of her friend who had solar panels installed on the roof, and where they were sleeping at night, without even thinking about it, they actually had the inverter the other side of their bed head. and you know, they would sleep side by side. And I think the husband developed the brain tumor on the left side, and she was sleeping to the left of him, and she developed a brain tumor on the right side of the brain, right where that inverter was pumping out. And so, you know, that's really, you know, making that case for awareness of where, you know, we're all trying to do out the right thing for the environment and go for solar panels, but it's really important that that inverter is placed away from where you're sleeping.
Absolutely. And look, it's, you know, can it be coincidental, you know, those brain tumors? It's you know, I've had a lot of people tell me that story. And solar inverters do put out a very high magnetic field. So that's, you know, that's always something that I'm looking for. And like, for instance, I also do online assessments. So there's not a lot of people that have an EMF consultant in their town that it can actually come into their home and have the actual readings done. So the next best thing is, if they don't have an EMF consultant, I can actually go through their home with them. So we look at what the health issues are, and I get a bit of a background, a little short questionnaire to fill out about what's in the area. Then I get them to send me a floor plan, upload me a floor plan. It can just be a mud map. And so then I have a bird's eye view of actually what's going on in their home, and I can actually pinpoint things for them then and there. It's not as great as having me actually come in and measure what's actually happening, but it's the next best thing. And I've picked up a lot of amazing things that I've been able to help people with. And yeah, so that's where I can also pinpoint, you know, other problems as well with doing that online assessment.
And, you know, you also do a bit of proactive stuff, because when I was building my space down by the pool, that's our inverters and solar panels are on our shed. And as we extended the shed, I was concerned about the inverter, and you then sort of suggested, you know, what to line the shed with to try and limit the impact of that inverter and what it was doing. So,
Yeah.
you know, if you're about to build something, it's probably a good idea to double check with you as well where the best place to put all these things.
Absolutely. And also too, buying a new home as well. Now, I had some clients quite a few years ago. They both had, they were in the health industry, and they both said, you have to come and test our home. We're suffering from these issues, and we're pretty sure it's EMF. And they explained their symptoms, and I thought, yeah, I think it is too. So I went around there and I did all the testing, and their home was, what they were being impacted from was actual external sources, and it was extremely high. And so this is only one assessment I've done where the best thing for them to do, apart from put on full-on shielding, was to actually move. And they decided that they were going to move. So I gave them a heap of tips and hints to follow through when they were looking for their home. And I said, whatever you do, get me in to test it before you purchase it. And then we can, you know, and we can have a picture of what's actually going on. Well, what happened was these people come up with an offer that was too good to refuse on a play. It was a beautiful home on the river, and the person that sold it had to sell because they had health issues and they couldn't stay there anymore. So they moved there, they bought it, and they were doing some renovations. And they said, Di, come around and do an assessment for us and test it. So I went around there and I tested it for them, and they'd actually gone from the frying pan into the fire. So, you know, that if I could have just got there for them and tested it, they wouldn't have bought that property.
And I guess once you're sensitive, you're even more vulnerable, because the body is at a weak state. So Di, I'm going to just let people know that if you're on a desktop, down near the toolbar, down near the bottom, there will be a thing that says chat. So at this point, if you want to start putting some questions in for Di into the chat box, so you're welcome to start putting some questions in, and Di's open to answering any of your queries. And, you know, just so while we're just sort of running through. So, Di, if you just wanted to quickly run through some of the side effects that people might be experiencing as a result of EMF before we wrap up, just so that it gives people an idea that, you know, some of their health issues might not be, you know, related to their food. It might actually be to EMF. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And so some of the symptoms, well, you knew my symptoms. My symptoms were, you know, the insomnia. So there's sleeping difficulties, there's memory problems, there's brain fog. Someone might tell you the name, you instantly forget it, things like that. Excuse me, there's the fatigue, the tiredness. It can lead to extreme fatigue or just being drained all the time. People get drained being in front of their devices. And it's the radio frequencies that are doing it. So we've got also fibromyalgia-like symptoms. There's tingling and pins and needles in the extremities. I've said the memory loss. For the kids, so kids, we're looking at things like, because kids are so much more vulnerable to this than what we are. So the kids, they can have ADHD-like symptoms. They can have lack of focus. They can't focus. They can't concentrate. They can just have learning difficulties. They can have behavioural problems. Other symptoms, I've just gone blank for a moment. Sorry about that, guys. Just gonna be, oh yeah. You know, then we have our real symptoms like miscarriages. So that can come from sleeping within a very high magnetic field, or it doesn't even have to be very high. We've got tinnitus, balance problems, vertigo, it's insomnia, anxiety, depression. The list is quite endless. It's just a kind of an endless list. And I know it's extremely hard for doctors to pinpoint if you have EHS, what we call electrical hypersensitivity, because they haven't learned about it. They don't know about it. So for me, I was lucky enough to realise, oh my gosh, it's something in my environment. So if what your naturopath or your doctor is looking at isn't helping you, then it's always a good idea to have a look at what's going on in your environment and just checking that out first, because that's where you're spending most of your time there.
I certainly know my beloved turned 60 this year, and you know, certainly when he went through and did his medical degree, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have Wi-Fi. We had corded phones that plugged into the walls. So, you know, we didn't have smart TVs and fridges. So medical practitioners aren't trained in this area. And so if you're coming to them with these symptoms, they're going to naturally start looking at, you know, what you're eating perhaps and that kind of stuff. They're not really thinking, well, not that's a blanket statement, but, you know, particularly the ones who've trained a long time ago, they might not be as acutely aware of these sensitivities, although it's starting to make its way into medical journals. I'm going to pull up the chat box now, and there's a few questions. And the first question is from Josanne. Do salt lamps help at all?
Oh, Josanne, hello. Salt lamps. I think with salt lamps are great for ambience, and they certainly don't help with electromagnetic fields at all.
Okay.
So if you have a salt lamp, and if I take a reading next to your Wi-Fi router, or you know, wherever we do the reading, and then we put the salt lamp there, the reading's not going to change. It's still going to be putting out the same energy. And from my understanding of a salt lamp, the negative ions that are emitted from those usually only come out a certain way, but that's just a certain distance, but that's just my understanding of what I know about salt lamps.
I think the salt lamps are doing something to change the electrical charge in the air from a positive ion to negative ion, as opposed to actually changing the wavelength and the frequency at which energy is traveling. Jan's asking a question here, which could be, you know, opening all things up. What is your opinion about the dangers that we're hearing about 5G?
I wondered if 5G might come up, and it's not something that I was really actually going to cover tonight, but I love Jan, the beautiful chi consultant. Yeah, so the 5G, there is a lot going on around the world. A lot of people are standing up against 5G. It's something that I've rang up a really well-known scientist here in Australia to find out as much information as I can about 5G. Jan, that's Lynn McLean. And she would not give me any information because she said, we don't know anything about it. I said, well, how can I help people protect themselves? She said, don't know. She said, we don't know enough about it yet. Actually, how it's going to, what the actual impact is going to be. So my understanding of 5G is if you don't get 5G devices, because a lot of 5G, the way it's going to connect to your device is it's going to be a beamform, which is probably better off because it's not going to irradiate everyone around you like the 4G is at the moment. But you're still going to need that 4G tower next to you to get the beam. So anyone standing in the way of that beam, of course, is going to be impacted as well. And there's also talk that so the 5G is in two areas, basically. There's a low spectrum and a high spectrum. And they're feeling like the high spectrum is not even going to be able to really penetrate at the walls. And that the any change in weather or the wind blowing the leaves and that is actually going to impact the signal. So that's with the higher 5G. So I don't know what they're going to actually be, how they're going to maneuver that. I really don't know what's going on with 5G. I am actually studying it at the moment, what I can about it. But yeah, my suggestion is don't get any 5G devices.
So thank you, Dianne. I'm going to move on to the next question, and I'm aware that we only do this for an hour, and I'm hoping that you don't mind staying online for a little while longer, Dianne.
Yeah, I'm fine. I want to talk about these too.
Okay, super. Yes, and we have a lucky draw prize to come. But Karen is up in Cairns, and she's asking, do you know anyone that can come check her home out in Cairns? Before Dianne answers that, I'm going to suggest that you get a few girls together, Karen, that need their home done, and Di does a road trip up to Cairns, and we can do a girls trip and have some fun.
Oh yes, I'm all for fun. No, I don't know of anybody. I belong to the Australian Society of Building Biologists, and on their website they have a list of all the building biologists around Australia, ladies. So and what cities they're in, and at this stage there aren't any in Cairns. Now you do have to be aware that there are some people training and saying that they are EMF consultants. I'm sorry about the next door neighbour's dog. So you just have to be careful that people, I'd be looking into the credentials and who they're trained by. But I'm sorry, I don't know of anybody in Cairns.
Would you be willing to go up to Cairns and do a couple of homes?
Of course I would. I'm happy to help anyone out anywhere.
Yeah. So get a group of people who want it done, and Dianne can come up and have a field trip. So the next question, Sonali's asking, hi, her Wi-Fi is in the storeroom parallel to the bedrooms. There is a passage in between. Does that help? Absolutely.
Yes. Distance. The further away that Wi-Fi router is from anybody, Sonali, the better. Yeah, absolutely. And because it is, fairly close to the bedrooms, I would be turning it off at night.
After hearing the output of our modem, I turn my Wi-Fi off as often as I can. So once you hear it on the machine and the sound of what your cells are feeling, you can't go backwards. You're constantly aware, and you can't unknow it. Now, my gorgeous VA has said that she works right next to her Wi-Fi modem. So if she uses an Ethernet cable, would that make a difference?
Yes. but remembering, Christine, and there will, well, you can email me, Christine, but remembering that you need to turn the Wi-Fi off, and you need to disable Wi-Fi on your computer and put your computer in flight mode. Now, some routers and the newer ones coming out, you can't disable the Wi-Fi. So there are certain routers that that when you turn the Wi-Fi off, it does go off, but others, it just pops back on. So if you can, Christine, I would move the router well away from you, just in case it is one of those that does pop back on, and then use that Ethernet cable and yeah, and just do what I suggested. Then turn the wireless off and make sure your computer's in flight mode. If you've got a wireless mouse, ditch that. If you've got a wireless keyboard, ditch that and get wired.
Yeah, my beautiful VA works full time for me, so that's many, many hours sitting at her computer. So yeah, I'm hoping that that will sort that one out. So Dianne, do you think we need to go to the shops and buy some old-fashioned modems and routers before they all convert over to these new ones that just flick back?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be a good idea.
Yeah. Okay. So Sonali's done, I've seen so many products you can use to control EMF. Are there any products that you know of that can really help?
No. No. The only thing is getting rid of the wireless or creating a distance from the wireless device. And for external sources, you just have to shield your home. There's no gadgets, there's no magic gadgets or anything that I've come across or any other building biologist has come across that is known to reduce the exposure. It's just distance.
And recently you were also testing, you know, there's a lot on the internet to talk about the shungite crystals protecting you from EMF, and you've done some testing of that and found that that's not true. That's
right. I had a guy saying, oh, you should check this shungite out and recommend this to your customers. And I said, well, from all I've heard, I had a colleague that tested shungite, and she said it actually amplified the readings. It didn't lower them. And he said, oh, I've just ordered a fair bit of it. Would you come around and test it for me? I said, I'd love to. So we went around there. He was really great. And so he had this little pyramid, shungite pyramid that he was told to, instructions said, place it in front of the wireless router. So he, and that's going to protect you. And he had something for his phone and he had something else. So I did all the readings with the shungite, everything, the omnidirectional readings, directional, everything, no difference whatsoever. And even with the thing for the phone, didn't make any difference whatsoever. So I love crystals, and I suppose what I'm saying is that by all means have these, but please don't feel that they're protecting you. They may be, but in ways that I can't measure, that I can actually say, yes, this works 100%. So by all means, if you feel that the shungite's going to help, have shungite, but I'd be still keeping my distance. I'd still be doing everything else I can to reduce my exposure and not relying on that.
Super. Thank you. What about hot water tanks behind bedroom walls? Do they emit energy, and how much?
Yeah, great question. Hot water service, yes. I don't know how much. They're all different. And the only time it's going to emit EMF is when it's on, when it's heating the water. When it's not heating the water, there's not going to be a magnetic field. There will be an electric field. That's something a little bit different. But so when that hot water service is on, that's when it's the most dangerous. So I would look at making sure that there's no one spending time around that area when that hot water service is on.
Does Bluetooth cause the same issues as Wi-Fi?
Yes. Yes, but Bluetooth doesn't have doesn't cover the area that wireless does. The Bluetooth is more secluded. It, you know, only goes about 10 meters, I think, but it still has the same impact and the same, it still has the same, uses the same, you know, energy.
So, you know, if you're playing your music on a Bluetooth speaker and you're sitting somewhere else and you're sitting in between that, are you being affected by it?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, even if you're sitting like, yes, you are. Yeah. So you just don't want to be near the, I've measured, been to a school and I've measured one of those wireless speakers, and yeah, I'm just saying, don't let the kids sit near this. You know, you want to keep this well away, because it was putting out a, and it wasn't being used. It was just sitting there, and it was emitting. So yeah, Bluetooth. You know, it's Wi-Fi. It's microwave radiation, no matter what way you look at it. So yeah, it's not ideal either.
Okay.
Mind you, it's just affecting you. It's not affecting everyone else in the home, basically.
So we're moving on to Adele. Is the solar inverter as dangerous in the evening as during the day when it's generating?
No, it's only the solar panels only emit a magnetic field when they're working, and the inverter only when it is
Generate.
when it's generating and doing its job. That's when it's emitting a high magnetic field.
Now, Di, I'm going to go back to that Bluetooth question.
Yep.
Because the latest thing that I'm seeing is people putting those little AirPods in their ears. And I'm just wondering what your opinion on that is.
I was actually going to cover that because I've seen film clips where they've measured those AirPods. So they've been in their little containers, they've opened the lid and bang, 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 the meter's just gone off. That's just with the lid open. So you're going to put those things in your ear, and they don't, they communicate with each other. So they're communicating with each other through your ear canals and whatever else is in the way there. And I have a graphic somewhere about the little wireless earpod things and how they impact. Yeah, so you don't want to be using those. Absolutely not.
So that's the little wireless earpods. Now, what about just using normal headphones?
Okay, so with the normal headphones, they have wires all the way up into the ears, and EMF is attracted to the wires. It's like an antenna. Here I am. So it travels up and into your ear canals as well. I don't believe that they're as bad as the wireless ones. Well, I know they're not as bad as the wireless ones. But so they are better than the wireless ones, but they're not ideal because you're still getting that EMF traveling up into the ear canals.
So you have a solution?
I do. My first solution always is, if you are using your mobile phone, is to have it on speakerphone if you can. Never hold it up to the ear, and have it down on the bench and just talk to people like that. Your next best solution is to use air tube headsets or radiation-free headsets. You may have heard of them. They're getting quite popular. And how these work is that there's only one little bit of metal on them. So because the metal and everything acts as an antenna. So there's only one little bit of metal, and that's what plugs into your device, your phone, your iPad, your iPod, whatever that you use. And the rest of it is like some special kind of plastic stuff, very sturdy. And the part that plugs into your device, and the rest of it is made of special copper cabling that's braided basically to reduce EMF exposure, and then it's covered with the shielded with shielding. So when it's resting on your body, you're not being impacted by the EMF. And then, of course, the main thing is that the last 15 centimeters is an air tube. So there's absolutely no wire here at all that the EMF can travel up. So when you put these in your ear, there's, you know, there's just the sound coming up through the air tube. I have had people say to me that the sound quality is really good too, that like to listen to music. Yeah, so these are your next best option after speakerphone. Speakerphone is preferred.
So Dianne gifted me some air tubes after she did the assessment on my home, and I was surprised to think that listening to sound just traveling through an air tube actually worked. It really is quite amazing. So Dianne has been incredibly generous, and she will be gifting it as the lucky door prize, a set of those. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Super. So Christine, would you please, I'm going to unmute Christine, and Christine's going to do the lucky door prize. And I've just asked, yes, super. Hi, Christine.
Hello, guys. Hi, ladies.
Okay, so can you tell us who the lucky winner is tonight?
Here we go. So the lucky winner would be Sonali.
Oh, fabulous.
Congratulations.
I'm going to unmute you, Sonali. There we go. Oh, it's not unmuting. Oh, there we go. Hello. Hi, Sonali. Well done. Oh, it's got back.
Muted again. Hold on, Sonali. We can't hear you.
Hold on. I'm asking to unmute. I think you might need to just press that button again. There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're live.
All right, great. Thank you, Christine. Thank you so much.
Super.
And thanks, Dianne. Thanks.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'll be in touch with you, Sonali, and because I know your details, and work out how to get the headsets to you and see
Thank
what
you so much.
Your choice of colour would be.
Okay.
Thank you so
Lovely.
much.
Congratulations.
Yay.
Brilliant. And I always love my beautiful guests because they're so incredibly generous. What's also going to be going out tomorrow is the recording. So if you feel like you've missed any information, you'll be able to re-watch it, and we will send you a PDF. Dianne has put together a PDF. Dianne, can you just tell us what's in the PDF?
Absolutely. So I'm very passionate about people using their mobile phones safely, because you know, a lot of people are attached to their mobile phone and they use it for so many things. So I'd just like to send out it's a PDF on just a few tips on how to use your mobile device, your mobile phone safely. This also goes for your other devices as well. So I'm really hoping that that you find this of benefit.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Incredibly generous with your time and your information, your sharing of so many tips. And, you know, I've learned even more tonight, which is always great. So ladies, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Dianne. We're having a break next week. June is my birthday month, so I'm taking a little bit of a break from putting out some webinars, and we will return. I do have Karina in Bali, and we're going to be running a webinar on how to raise your vibration and frequency with breath work. Ooh. So really, really fascinating, and she's got the most amazing voice as well for some sound healing as well. So you're getting a flurry of beautiful gratitude, Dianne, from everybody. If you wanted to look in the chat box, everyone's saying thank you, and I'm getting goosies all over my body, so I can feel that beautiful gratitude. It's been a fantastic evening, and I'm so incredibly grateful for you coming here tonight and sharing all your beautiful wisdom. If you would like to get in contact with Dianne, certainly I've been tagging her in Rest Assured Queensland on Facebook. Dianne also has a free 15-minute chat. So, you know, take advantage of that if you want to have a quick call and find out a little bit more. Dianne can work with you if you're not in Townsville. Like she said, we can do this, or she can do this, not me. She can do this at a distance as well, using mud maps to help you. So once again, thank you for joining us, everyone. Thank you, Dianne.
Thank you, ladies.
We'll catch you all in a couple of weeks.
Good night. Thank you, ladies.
Good
Bye.
night.